So lately I've been marinating on the overlap between the words judgment and discernment. Whereas as I've gotten older in life, I have chosen to skew away from concepts of judgment and allowing judging to rule my decision making versus embracing my levels of discernment. Now, judgment, or what comes with judgment, in my view, are concepts of authority. And if we're digging deeper, there's this legal framework or concept of a judgment that is naturally paired with this concept of a jury. And if we're going medieval, an executioner, where I'm typically not interested in being an authority to anyone but myself. And I don't really have the bandwidth to seek a jury of my peers for everyday decision making. And I'm mostly not interested in killing anything, where, we can have that conversation on executing maybe at a little bit of a different time. That being said, I have leaned more towards this concept of discernment in my later years, where discernment, it just feels better, where I have much more of a personal stake in my decision-making process, where the discerning qualities of my eyes, my ears, my thoughts, or even my heart comes in the form of seeking to listen, to see, and to understand. Now, this concept of knowing what's for me and what's not gives me the flexibility of not making any sort of snap judgments or quick judgments. But what it does allow me to do, what discerning allows me to do, is to seek out the information, the marrow, the qualities of the information that allows me to decide in my everyday decision-making habits and routines on what is for me and what's not. Now, one of my favorite examples of this concept, which is that overlap between judgment and discernment, comes from my stepdad's father. And I suppose we should call him my step-grandfather, but that's neither here nor there. Now, one of the funniest stories that I heard about him was that he didn't like chocolate, which to the average listener sounds kind of interesting, I suppose. Like, who doesn't like chocolate? And what was even funnier about the story was that he actually had never even tasted chocolate. He just knew he didn't like it. Now, some people might approach his critical flavor profile or critical taste in that perhaps he's limiting himself. And, they might even make the argument, how can you decide that that's not for you if you haven't ever experienced it? Which does offer some semblances of truth. However, I would argue that the levels of discernment that he offered was not an indemnification of anyone that liked chocolate. It was a man who was after his own heart. And his level of discernment in the form of the way that chocolate looked, the way that chocolate smelled, the way that chocolate felt, led him to believe that he wasn't a chocolate guy. Which, shout out to him. It becomes this delicate balancing act of recognizing that your decision-making autonomy sometimes has the ability to impact other people's perception. And some of us, or a lot of us, look to our peers. We look to influencers. We look to thought leaders and subject matter experts in order to help us to judge and or decide what is for us. Where my encouragement for you today comes in the form of exercising your discernment muscle. And that's not to say to not try things. Try things, do things, experience life. However, if you find yourself struggling with your internal monologue, that voice or feeling inside that is encouraging you to not do something, listen up.